Hello and welcome to Access Astrology for April 1st, 2025. Here we are at this turning point of the season with life coming alive and the vitality coming forth. We're very excited about that. Uh, and there's so much tension going on in the world right now. The sun is flaring, it is sending off huge bursts. The polarity seems to have shifted so that the solar flares are in the north rather than in the south, but it's still shooting off big bursts. They're apparently lovely aurora borealis if you're not under a cloud cover, which we always are here in the wintertime. It doesn't, no clouds from the entire summer, but lots right now here in Montana. This is Heather Rowan Robbins speaking to you tonight from Ronan, Montana, speaking of, and I'm joined by Mark.
Mark Waltz from New York City, and we don't have a cloud cover, we have light, light everywhere.
and it feels so good to see that light lasting late into the day, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. What's bothersome is when it gets to be night and the aurora borealis would be really
That's why
pretty.
you can't see it.
You
Yeah.
can't see it because of the street lights and window lights and roof
Mm.
lights and subway lights, lights everywhere.
And we may or may not be joined by Ann Ortley from New York City. I think she is now, or back. Is she still
She's in
in?
Florida.
She's still in Florida.
Yeah.
And well, she's our East Coast traveler. At this time, Mercury is about to turn direct. It is
Direct.
retrograde, has been for the last 3 weeks. It is slowing down to hold still for the weekend. And next week goes direct Monday morning as the moon goes into Leo and builds up some really interesting energy. This is the chart for today. The moon has just gone into Gemini. The sun is pulling away from Neptune. It's in Aries, pulling towards Chiron. But that's what's exciting. The big astrological news is Neptune has just gone into Aries. And it went in this morning, and it's already, you can feel the shift. Now, I was looking at what happened last time Neptune went into Aries. It was quite an exciting time. It started on the very first day of the American Civil War. But there were civil wars also in China, Russia, Japan, Spain during the 14 years it was going through Aries last time. But there was also all kinds of interesting inventions. We saw the first transatlantic cable, the first trains through, this first subway in London, and the first, trains going across the country here in America. Really exciting time when um, invention started to manifest. It was a bicycle craze. Everybody wanted to get out and get moving. Neptune talks about what we idealize, what we imagine, what we vision, what we look up to. And so there was both this intention of that, in the first 4 years, it would throw us right into the heart of our American Civil War and tore us up with that conflict. But slaves were the end of slavery here in America and the end of serfdom in Russia during that Neptune in Aries. It was also a time of scientific exploration. We had the periodic table was first organized, the first concepts of how genetics worked and what the system was through of inheritance and genetic inheritance came online. Pasteurization began. So there's some really interesting applied sciences. And I see that echoing here, that we're going to be doing both our personal work and that echo on in the world. And so I'm kind of excited. What do you see, Mark, about Neptune going into Aries? What have you noticed or feel happening in the culture that you think it's important for people to remember?
Well, I'm expecting to see some real new approaches to music and film. I think we'll see a whole new kind of understanding of film and things we can do with it, and I think it's going to shift. Um, At the same time, Neptune has a way of dissolving things, making them float. But when they float, there's no way to steer them. And I see we have a couple of clowns in Washington that are causing that to happen. There's things are being set loose from their anchors, and they're going which way nobody knows. The stock
Mm-hmm.
market says they don't know what to do with it, and people running organizations, same thing. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know what to count on. So we're seeing that happen and understanding that Neptune in Aries is calling for actions that dissolve things. It'll help us to get through this because we can understand that it is an expression of the cosmos in our backyard, in our front yard, and on top of the roof.
Look for where you have in your chart 0 degrees of a cardinal sign. That's Aries, Capricorn, Libra, and Cancer, because that will be really stimulated by that, or where you have 0 degrees of a fire sign. And notice that's going to get a lot of heat in this. If you don't have a planet there, what house does 0 Aries fall in your chart? And we're feeling Mercury is stationary, so we've got a lot of fuel around, but it's hard to build momentum with Mercury retrograde and with some of the other aspects that have been going on. Mars is forming a trine this week to Saturn, and that can be very helpful to have that kind of defensive, protective Mars energy. But it's also the young buck energy, like I want to make something happen. And Saturn in Pisces working together. How can they work together? Which is the old structures, the old systems. It's still old guard. And Saturn will be moving into Aries. I'm going to start to really see some changes, for better or worse, towards the end of May when Saturn goes into Aries and almost joins Neptune. They do conjunct next spring, but they almost conjunct this year. And soon we'll be seeing Mars leave Cancer, where it's been for 6 months, going back and forth, and enter Leo. And I think we're going to see the demonstrations really pick up, and possibly the pressure on the other side. Conflict is, how do we use it constructively? Neptune in Aries is a lot of fuel. And like as Mark says, Neptune in Aries wants action. And with that fuel can really fuel our changes for the better. It can fuel our growth. It can fuel our self responsibility. We have to move out of knee jerk opposition reaction and really change the focus to where we want to go instead, and have a place to go rather than feed where we don't want to go. It's good to put up resistance when we need to. Aries is always good for that, but it's the direction that will take the power over the next 14 years. So
Yeah, and
I'm,
it is possible to steer things with Neptune.
mhm.
You know, it has that quality of floating, but Mars is actually very helpful in steering things because it can pick a direction and just go, and nothing gets in the way. Mars just goes over it or around it or through it, you know. So having Mars working with Neptune is really helpful.
So Moon is in Gemini now. It heads into Cancer in a few days. On Friday, we have Mars sextiles Uranus, and that forms a really interesting. Um, is there a name for this where it's the trine and they both sextile a third point? So it's going to be
Mm.
felt all week, but it's going to be exact on Friday. And I think it kind of acts as a momentum for change, but Mercury stationary, so it may not. It may feel more explosive. I'm seeing this, with fires, with the shifting energy underneath us, the shifting social currents, the shifting tectonic plates. Um, Quite literally, can be volcanoes with things aren't moving and there's no place to go, so it goes up. kind of keep an eye on those big volatile things, but where else can we use it in a good way for our own changes, beginning new projects, this fresh energy of the spring that wants to take action, to put Mars action with Saturn structure, form, and discipline into positive change, into change. Let's hope it's positive
Yeah.
with Uranus there. So that'll be on Friday. On Saturday, there's some really nice trines as the moon trines Saturn, conjuncts Mars, trines Venus, trines Mercury, and then heads into Leo and trines Neptune in the evening. So Saturday, I know there's a lot of demonstrations planned for Saturday. It's going to be an interesting story the whole day, minute by minute. Things could change. In our own life, it may just be a day to come back to ourselves and refill the wells if we want, but I'd say keep an eye on the bigger picture and on the news that day. On Sunday, the sun sextiles Jupiter. We have a new, on Sunday the 6th, it's kind of, we feel like there's possibilities in the air, but can't quite get it. But it's important to come back to our relationships over this weekend because Venus sextiles, Venus trines Mars. And we we want love. We want to get along with each other. We want to have that. It's in water signs. They're both in water signs right now. We want that connection. Now, I think we're really going to feel the spring revolution pick up when both Venus and Mercury turn direct and head back into Aries, where they were a few weeks ago. We're really going to feel that. Mercury hits there in mid April, and then Venus afterwards. Venus and Saturn conjunct on as Mercury turns direct on Monday. Now, how do you feel, Mark, about that Venus Saturn conjunction?
I think that uh, anyone who's dealing with the stock market will find a little reprieve with that.
A little sanity there for a
Yeah, a
minute.
little sanity. It's been so hard to do things with the stock market because who knows where it's going.
Right.
And
It's a very emotional, not a logical process
right,
when you watch those aspects.
right. But Venus hooking up with Saturn will really help because Saturn brings us stability and accountability. So the wildness is going on. That should ease up, at least for a day.
Yeah. And I see as Mercury turns direct next week. Now, the American Bar Association came out with a really beautiful letter today, and you can Google it, about the power of the law and the rule of law and how they will are dedicated to supporting the rule of law, and it's their time as lawyers to do the right thing and be heroes. To really, they didn't say that, but to really step up to the plate and support the rule of law all across the board. They didn't discuss political sides, but they did speak up about the rule of law. They're going to see that, you know, be an important part of what I think is coming up. And I think Venus conjunct Saturn is can be I love the structure, I love the law, I love the traditions, I love systems that have worked. There's so many letting go of systems that don't work, but to find the systems in our life that do work and use those as terra firma to deal with what's not working. I think that continues. So the moon goes into Virgo on Tuesday. And I think much of next week is all about kind of straightening up conditions after Mercury retrograde. That whole first week, people say it's direct, but why do I still feel out of whack? Because it's still in its shadow. It's still going back over the area that it transversed when it was retrograde, and it's slowly picking up, appearing to pick up speed. It doesn't slow down. It's only the difference between its orbit and ours. But that place will help us come to a new. Hmm, I help getting those points straightened out early next week. I always think it feels like clearing the gutters, it's just straightening out the orders, correcting the misunderstandings, finding the missing things can be truly helpful early
And
next week.
it's actually a good moment, a long moment to uh, take what Mercury retrograde brought to us and learn the lessons from it.
Oh, that's
Often,
beautiful.
as it's going backwards, we don't learn what we're meant to learn as much as we do when it goes forward again. So it's stomping on the same degrees of the zodiac that it went through. First direct, then it backed up retrograde, then it goes direct again. And as it does that, we're looking in the dustbin where things got swept as Mercury went backwards. And now we get to pull out some of those things and reuse them.
That's beautiful.
We can recycle what Mercury took apart.
That's beautiful. And one of the stories today, speaking of taking things apart, Cory Booker is speaking in the Senate. It's been over 20 hours. He doesn't sound like he wants to stop. He's speaking up and listing all the things that he feels is going wrong, that he's worried about with this administration. And so, he's a moon in Virgo. He's a Taurus moon in Virgo. So let's look at the transits for the day. What's stimulating this in him? Because that takes guts. And the moon and Virgos are great gadflies. They're the ones who can see what's going on and fix it. They may not always be so good at leading the charge and bringing consensus, but boy, can they see what needs to be fixed. But he has Mars in Sagittarius natally, who's kind of good at speaking directly and speaking the truth. Aquarius rising. Pluto's been going back and forth over his ascendant for the last year and a half. And here he is speaking forward, really speaking up with Pluto in the first house and continuing to speak. But it's also, he has Mercury in Taurus, and Uranus is sitting exactly conjuncted. Now, this is the third pass. It's already hit it twice. But it is, it's only going to happen, it may go back and forth retrograde, but it's an 84-year cycle. So it's going to be another 84 years before Uranus is sitting right on his Mercury. And he is talking, Mercury in Taurus, he is speaking steadily, nonstop for 20 hours. That's no bathroom breaks, no food breaks, no nothing. And he is just going at it. And right now, the moon has just gone into Gemini, sitting right on his Vesta, like sacrificing himself or offering himself through words, which I think is a pretty powerful thing. The sun is sitting right on his Venus, or within 2 degrees, he's speaking from the heart here. So I thought that was a really interesting set of transits.
Yes, he's using it well. Mm-hmm. We can take that as a lesson. So, we can see Pluto on the ascendant working so strongly for him. See in your chart where Pluto is by transit and see if you can put some extra energy into that.
And he is born in Washington, D.C. So, many politicians that are born like John McCain had a powerful chart in Arizona, but when he moved to Washington, D.C., the relocation chart had all kinds of problems. So he had great power when he was speaking as the senator, but when he ran for national office, it was difficult. This chart will be the same in Washington because that's where he was born. He's coming back to his birthplace for it, and Newark isn't that far north from there. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, we were given one chart to look at for Hannah and some questions about whether, how, one question was, do you use your natal chart or do you use your relocated chart for transits? I find that both work, but I always use the natal chart. You never change your natal chart. That is who you are. Your relocated chart talks about what that area brings out in you. So I would say look at transits and progressions in your natal chart, then look at is it happening, where is it happening on your relocated chart? Almost more important, if you look and you are on a major line, like one of the planets is rising, setting, or directly above or below where you've relocated, and that planet may be Jupiter and it looks lovely, but Pluto is squaring your Jupiter, it won't feel lovely during that. Like you're moving into the heart of that aspect. So you always have to look at transits in relationship to the relocated chart and to the location place. What to look for in gambling? If I knew, I would be a better gambler. We're going to wait and let Anne answer that question because she's got some pretty good answers on that. Do you have any thoughts on the relocated chart, Mark, or on the?
The relocated chart is helpful. It gives an idea why you feel the way you do in that relocated place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you some things you like, some you don't like, and it'll be reflected in your chart. And you use some things better than others. Sometimes making a move is the right thing to do. We're just not able to shine where we were born, but there's something special that comes in a relocation. But again, you never change your natal chart. That's your wiring. So if you
Say
relocate,
that's your piano.
yeah, yeah, and it only has certain notes, and that's what you play.
And so we had a question from one of our, let's see, to get that off and then this on. Here we go. Hannah wanted to know, born in Torquay, and questions about she has a series of quincunx, otherwise it used to be called inconjuncts, one between Saturn and the Sun, an exact 5 degrees to 5 degrees. And quincunx are like semi-sextiles. They're between two positions that have nothing in common. They have no polarity, no modality, no element in common. And it feels like quincunxes are. I have a sun, was it Mercury Moon quincunx or Mercury Moon opposition, Mars Moon quincunx. And it can stretch you like meeting a friend in a foreign culture that you have very little in common with. But as you try to understand each other, you grow because it stretches you. It's not familiar. These are two things that have to do some effort at helping them put together. So the two quincunx she has are, the moon is 29 Aquarius, which is almost one Pisces. Quincunx her Pluto. And so it's interesting that both parental planets, the moon and
And so,
Saturn, have quincunxes. Can feel. What would you read with that, Mark?
uh, it's it's interesting when when you see a quincunx. It's a we often say coulda, shoulda, woulda. There's a talent in that quincunx, an unusual way of being able to work like Saturn and the Sun together, but it's not obvious how to do that in a grounded way. So it can be very frustrating. And the best you can do is be aware of it, know that you have a talent there, and you're going to have to find an unusual way to express it. Otherwise, it'll remain a possibility, a coulda, shoulda, woulda thing that's
That
goes
comes
with you.
from putting those pieces together.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks like there was a fair amount of talent that ran in her family, but wasn't necessarily actualized, or they couldn't show her how to live it out.
yeah,
That, moon at the last degree of Aquarius, quincunx Pluto, and pulling away from a conjunction to Mars, because the faster planet always is, what direction is the faster planet moving? It looks like the mom, that temper and willpower and being able to do what you wanted, to what you believed in, like you manifesting your will, rather than being messy with your will, but manifesting your will might have been hard for the mother's side of the family, or for the mother. And the Saturn quincunx the sun, that, there may have been, some deep education around God, kind of empowering yourself and believing in your own work, that she didn't get mapped out for her or trained by her father's side of the family, but she inherited that competence. Does
yeah.
that make sense to you?
It does. It makes a lot of sense. And what you need to do with both of those actually is persist.
Hmm.
It's easy to, well, it's not easy to give up. It's very hard to give up with a quincunx. So trying to work that Saturn and Sun together and the Moon and Pluto together, uh, it's daunting. But if you can persist, a way will open up because you have that talent. It's trying to express, and you just don't give up on it. Treat it like it's yours because it is yours.
And I wanted to add her tri-wheel. So this is the natal chart we were just looking at, with progressions on the second ring out. And her progressive moon's going in back in Aquarius, and where the planets today are on the outside. And the other question she had was about that Uranus Chiron opposition. And that Uranus Chiron opposition ran for a very long time. So it's more, what houses do we have in it rather than that we have it, that they can ran for several years there. And it, and it looks like that sense of believing in herself. She has Uranus and Pluto in the first house, which can make it a little tricky. Like there was some interesting stories in her childhood about where she may not have felt seen or appreciated, or had to deal with either questions at home or something that made it hard for her to feel transparent and accepted. Um, and but that gave her empathy and strength and power in the long run, that Pluto in the first house. But that something about feeling different from the people around her left a place of a trust issue around relationships, because that Chiron in Aries in the seventh house. That those trust issues, you're both drawn to independent people, but it's a real like fear of, or not, dislike in being um, ramrodded by a strong personality. I'm drawn to strong personalities, but I need to feel accepted, and it's okay for me to be exactly who I am. Feels
That
like an
and that
important part of that.
that can work out well with mentoring. Either
Mm-hmm.
finding a mentor who can recognize and allow you to grow in your own way. In other words, not trying to control you, but truly mentor you. Or mentoring someone else. A lot of times you learn your own lessons by teaching them to someone that you didn't know you were ready to teach, but there you are. So you can identify someone who needs just a little guidance, a little way to change, and they'll respond to it. And then you pick up something from that, because you're giving yourself the same permission that you're giving them.
And we got one that's beautifully said, Mark. Someone asked, do we recommend an astrocartography reading before you move? If you're moving around the globe, I would highly recommend it. If you can get those, because it's interesting when people talk about parts of the world that they're drawn to and parts of the world they want to avoid, they usually are dead on with the astrocartography. I knew so many people who avoided the Vietnam War, and they had like Mars and Pluto lines right over it, like where to go to die. Or I've always wanted to move here, and I would love to move to New Zealand. I've never been there, but I've got a beautiful Jupiter line running right through it. So it's that we have a natural sense of it. So it may be that it's included, but it's helpful to look at the astrocartography and the transits, not to move to a Venus line just as Mars squares your Venus or as Pluto is squaring your Venus, because then you move into the heart of that aspect. So, and I do recommend an astrocartography reading if you can beforehand. I do them. A lot of astrologers do, um, and it's fascinating. So, Mark, would you like to close us out with? We're
Yeah,
asking people to kind of stay calm, like center in themselves and this weekend, and get ready to really clear up problems and start making long-term plans next week. What can you lead us on a
Yeah,
Aries meditation.
let's take a moment just to tune into the energy of Aries, which is the beginning of spring. Not the middle of spring. We're not there yet. It's the beginning, and it's really a very exciting time. So think for a moment where Aries is in your birth chart, and realize that Aries is bringing that energy in, waking it up, giving you an opportunity to sprout something new. So take a moment, think about your chart, think about where Aries is, think about what planets are in that area of Aries. Think about what house that Aries is in and the issues of that house. And just let those awarenesses just circulate for a moment in your mind. Good. Take a deeper breath in, open your eyes, and you're ready for spring.
Thank you, Mark. And we look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday here, 7:30 East Coast, 4:30 West Coast, 5:30 my time here in the mountains. This is Heather Rowan Robbins saying goodbye from Montana. And Mark,
Mark Woltz saying, see you next week. I'm in New York.
take care.